Last year, my previous therapist sent me a couple of resources to offer a different perspective on ADHD. They were articles about how Big Pharma is driving the overdiagnosis and overprescription of highly addictive speed, with some homeopathic alternatives to suggest. For context, I hadn't worked with this therapist for 6 months because I stopped working with them when my private health insurance sessions ran out, and I hadn't at any point expressed an interest in switching from my medication. If I was to describe my emotion at receiving this in a word, it would be fuming. And that's quite hard for me. I find anger a difficult emotion because it is very activating, but also because I believe generally people, and I also believe their intention in sending me that was well-intentioned and their heart was in the right place. But aside from it crossing, I think, a very clear professional boundary, which we'll come to later, it got me really fired up to fiercely protect people out there, maybe like you, who have, like me, been struggling to come to terms with and deal with their own shame about how medication helps them when there's so much noise telling us that we are almost getting taken advantage of and that we should be finding other alternatives. So I want to talk a bit today about the pressure that ADHDers face to feel we have to justify our medication decisions, and share an example of an area of my life which kind of just unlocked this moment of me realizing, like, oh no, I'm very confident about my decision here.
Doo-doo boo boo boo. ADHD adventures in being human. Let's see what's in store. And if you likey, why not do a subscribey?
As I'm sure lots of you are aware, there was a global shortage, still is an ongoing global shortage of stimulant medication. But at the beginning of last year, I was really feeling the brunt of it. I had gone to 10 different pharmacies around the Christmas period to try and get my prescription filled, and I just couldn't get it filled. At this time, I was still taking long-acting, I'm not anymore. I have other videos about my decision to change if you want to check those out. But I was really concerned about ending up with no medication. And so I started rationing my meds. But what that did is it put me in this really unhealthy place where I felt like I had to justify my decision to take medication. Like, which day do I need to be at my optimum? And getting into the habit of that made me feel like if I somehow did the day without them, I was like winning, like it was morally superior of me to be able to survive and manage without them. So really, this is where my anger towards the therapist sending me those resources was particularly kind of intense, if you will, because I felt like they were giving me information and unsolicited advice at a time in particular where I didn't need that. And in my view, and I'm pretty sure this is well accepted, the role of a therapist is not to push your own views or agenda, especially when you don't know the context of where your client or past client is at, right? And I'm not doing this video to throw shade on that person, right? Nothing is straightforward. There is so much that I got out of that therapy relationship that impacted me for the good. But this was an example, I think, of where a professional boundary was crossed. And that is a specific type of context where unsolicited advice was given. And I'm telling you it because it really set the kind of catalyst or the precedent of what I'm gonna conclude today. But really for the remainder of the video, when I'm talking about this kind of opinions or feeling like we need to justify to others, I kind of just mean on a general scale, right? Like the way it's portrayed in the media, or the way that we feel like maybe people are questioning or asking us about our decision to take medication, I think is often coming from a place of judgment or agenda and not of curiosity. And this isn't me not wanting to defend myself around my medicating decisions. It's not that I don't want to talk about it, because I think there's an extreme end of this, right, where it's like nobody should question me, nobody should give me unsolicited advice. Like, I'm happy to have a conversation, but only if that conversation comes from a place of genuine curiosity, not from a place of, I think you're doing something wrong, let me prove to you why you are. So over the course of a few months last year, I started to process how I felt about taking medication and some of that shame and some of that anger, and also spoke to my psychiatrist about my doses and switching up my medication in a way that would suit me a little bit better. And I realized something really important, that there is one area of my life where I have zero shame, guilt, insecurity about my decision to take chemicals to help me, and that is when it comes to premenstrual syndrome. I struggled way before my ADHD diagnosis with extreme PMS, premenstrual syndrome, also known as PMDD. I've never formally been diagnosed with PMDD. I don't think my symptoms are extreme enough for that. Also, I could just be a classic woman moving through the world being like, well, I just have to accept that I lose my mind entirely for 2 weeks out of every month. But that's a whole topic for another time. But PMS is something that I have struggled with for my entire adult life. And for me, that looks like my emotions feeling completely out of control, this weird and intense feeling of dread, like something bad is going to happen, being really overwhelmed easily in like environments that normally I would be okay with. And essentially just feeling like, although I normally operate, say, with a level of resilience here, there's 1 to 2 weeks every month before my period where it just drops out completely and I am a helpless shell of a human being. In 2020, I sought help for it, and I actually started taking the SSRI citalopram, which is commonly used as a antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication, for PMS. It's called luteal phase dosing. So for 2 weeks, on days 14 to 28 of my cycle, that was my brain going maths, I took 10 milligrams of citalopram, and it changed my life. Like, it took the edge off what I had been experiencing for so long that was making my life so difficult. Fast forward 2 years, I get diagnosed with ADHD, and I realized talking to my psychiatrist that really my version of PMS, what it is for me, is a hormonal exacerbation of ADHD. So I stopped taking the citalopram because I find that stimulant medication fills that gap for me in slightly different but overall better ways than the citalopram was. And so I take a increased dose around that time. By the way, if you want any more PMS related content, whether it's like symptoms, diagnosis journey, medication, let me know in the comments. I have so much I could say on that topic. It was thinking through my experience of medicating, choosing chemicals for PMS that made me feel like, hand on heart, I am so confident in my decision to do that. I do not want to live a life where I am not medicated during my premenstrual time. Now, things might change, our bodies, our hormones change. To be honest, I live in fear that it's for the worse. I'm not sure they're going to get better from here on out, but look, we will cross that bridge when we get to it. But my point is, during PMS time, like, I am so certain, and I've lived through it, and I can see how much chemicals have helped improve my quality of life during that time, that I have no doubts about it. And it doesn't mean there aren't other things that help. If I eat better, if I get good sleep, if I get exercise, yes, it all contributes, but nothing takes the edge off for me than some kind of chemical intervention. And I realized that if I can feel so strong about that in this area, why can't I apply that to other areas of my life that maybe aren't as extreme or obvious, but that has a benefit? Oh, so, guys, I feel like this is like an intense, serious energy that doesn't have as much as my usual funky flair. But this is what happens when you make Rach mad. See, I couldn't even finish that without doing a funny face. Complicated relationships with anger. I'm getting better at it though, can you tell? This isn't a clear-cut situation, right? Nothing is. That is life. There is nuance to all of this that gets very lost in translation during a media-frenzied clickbait headline. Big Pharma absolutely has an agenda. Pharmaceutical companies are businesses, they work for profit. Yes, it is in their interest to have more people taking stimulants, making profit from that. I'm not naive to that point. Yes, there are side effects from taking medication. Yes, there are consequences to your choice to medicate. But from my personal experience, as I mentioned earlier, often when people are questioning or criticizing others for their choice to medicate, it's not coming from a place of interest or curiosity. Often I think it's coming from a place that totally undermines the fact that this person has made an informed choice. And I actually find it quite insulting. I have coached a lot of people with ADHD. It's my job, it's my joy, it's my privilege to spend time with these people, right? They are some of the most thorough decision makers that I know. They do all the research, they doubt whether they're making the right decision, they live in fear of making the wrong one, they consider all of the options. So no, my psychiatrist didn't just push drugs on me in the interest of Big Pharma while I mindlessly nodded and said, yes, please sir, take all of my money, let me get addicted to this substance. And maybe some of you didn't feel like you make an informed choice up front and you just trusted their advice and you were like, great, I'm going straight on meds. My bet is though that you aren't continuing on them mindlessly because they impact your mind, your body, your behavior, your day. You are always making a judgment as to whether it is worth it for you or whether you are happy with the decision you've made. We're not falling victim to a capitalist society that just wants us to be productive. We're making informed choices that affect our brains and our bodies. For some of you, that choice will be to medicate. For others, it will be to not medicate. Every decision is valid. For some of you, you might take medication and that experience puts you off, and actually you feel quite strongly that it's not a good option for you or anyone. That's okay. You're entitled to that opinion and experience. Some of you might not take them and then decide at a point in life, actually, this is going to work for me. Our bodies change, our lives change, we're allowed to change our minds. So I want you to remember, if you are on this medication journey, that no one, not some media article writer online, not a content creator, YouTuber, coach, not a well-intentioned friend, or even your therapist, can make the decision as to whether taking medication is the right choice for you. You know your brain, you know your struggles, you know your unique circumstances, and you know the compromises that you're willing to make to improve your quality of life. Meds will not solve all of your problems, but that's because no single one thing will. And part of this is just deciding what are the jigsaw pieces of support and treatment you need to live a quality life. So I'm done feeling bad about the choice I've made or feeling like I need to defend that choice, though I realise that's ironic because this whole kind of video is me defending that choice. But I think for me personally, part of feeling like I don't need to defend myself is kind of like reaching the ultimate defense, which is knowing where I stand in me with the reasons for my choices and why it works. And I thought I would tell you that because, you know, if you're on this journey too, I want you to know that you're not alone in this and hopefully give you some confidence to be okay with your decision to medicate or not to medicate. If you liked this video, hit a little subscribe. I also have a playlist where you can explore more of my medication adventures that I've documented from the last 3 years. And if you're feeling settled on your medication but see there's areas of life where you need some different strategies and support, my coaching can help you with that. If you're interested, check out the link in my description. See you around.